Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Justice, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit new here. I posted onto the horror subreddit a few days ago and asked for everyone's hot takes that they have for different horror movies, and I got a whole bunch of comments actually, and I wanted to react to those here for you guys, and then at the end of the video, I'm going to throw in some of my own personal hot takes that I have, and this video is going to essentially just be me ripping on myself, ripping on some of these takes, even agreeing with some of them actually, so you'll get insights to some other hot takes that I probably have, and I just think it's cool to see everyone's different perspectives on all these movies that we either love or hate. So with all that rambling out of the way, let's start reacting to some of these takes. Nightmare on Elm Street 2010 isn't as bad as everyone says it is. In fact, it's better than most of the sequels. I actually do fall into a weird camp on this one, and I feel like too, in more recent years, a lot more people that are like in my age range have a lot more compassion for this remake than most other people who may have grown up or actually seen this original franchise back when it was in theaters. These movies were coming out in theaters like long before I was born. The only one that actually did release in theaters since I've been alive is Freddy vs. Jason. I really don't mind this remake. I don't think it touches the original, but I do think some of the stuff they added into this one I thought was really good. I enjoyed all the micro nightmares that they had, especially the scene inside of the drugstore. I thought that was really fun when you had Rooney Mara falling down and like getting like glimpses of Freddy attacking her. I thought that was really fun, and that was stuff I don't think they would have been able to do back in the 80s with the way the visual effects were back then. In the same breath too, I'm not going to glaze this movie by any means because like I said, I don't mind it, but it is not the best in the franchise because yes, I'm praising the effects in that scene, but overall, a lot of the effects are not that good. You have the effect of Freddy pushing himself through the ceiling in the original film over Nancy while she's in bed, which was done completely practical with, if I remember correctly, spandex. So dirt cheap to do that, but they do it in CGI in this film, and it looks really, really bad. Everybody points it out whenever they talk about it. So this movie does have a lot of misses. I do enjoy the darker tone of it. I find Freddy in this installment to be a lot scarier and less wisecracky. Even the edge of him being this predator, which has always been present in the original films. It never was outright said though, so I don't mind that edge. In fact, I kind of like it, although I do think they could have handled it better without having him seem like a victim for like the first half of the movie. But overall, like, I don't think this is a bad film, and I actually kind of like this one, so I actually agree with that take. Urban Legend should be an iconic 90s horror movie, nearly up alongside Scream. It's such a great throwback to old school slashers with an updated 90s sheen. It has all the stuff we love about the genre: hot people, dumb decisions, a killer in a costume, and a body count full of jerks. I'm not going to read the entire next paragraph because a lot of the points that they make I actually also agree with, but I have stuff I also want to say that is a little vice versa to it. I would probably rank this film up with I Know What You Did Last Summer if it wasn't for the fact that the lead final girl in the film is kind of boring. She's kind of bland and forgettable. I can't even tell you her name. I do not remember for the life of me. But what is memorable in this is Rebecca Gayheart. She does a phenomenal job as the lead killer. The ending scene with her reveal was really fun. She can play unhinged so freaking well. And there are a lot of sequences throughout this film that are really fun. When you have the radio host running around while on air and the killer's trying to attack her. The opening title sequence of the girl in her car with the urban legend of someone in the backseat behind her, and she's just sitting there trying to give herself a one-man karaoke show to Total Eclipse of the Heart. Like, that is so much fun. I enjoy that scene a lot. It's very memorable, but it also doesn't surprise me that this movie isn't as big as something like I Know What You Did Last Summer because of that lead final girl. I don't think she's that interesting. I don't know if it falls on the hands of the actors or the writing because she's just a very generic character. Whereas in like I Know What You Did Last Summer, you have characters like Julie, and arguably even more so Helen in that first installment that are so easy to root for and follow, and the actors are really good, even with the cheesy dialogue. But I also feel like within that cheesy dialogue, in that example, it is a lot more heartfelt, and it feels like the characters have a lot more to them than just their archetypes. It probably also doesn't help that like the future sequels in this franchise they're not that good at all. Like I think the second one, Final Cut, is a complete hot mess. The third one, it shouldn't even be an urban legend movie. Like I just don't think this franchise really had the chance to be this mainstream success, like something like Scream or I Know What You Did Last Summer, because it is a carbon copy knockoff at the end of the day. It makes sense to me why it isn't big. That also doesn't mean I don't think it's a good, entertaining movie. So, like, I kind of agree with you, but, like, I also don't. So, this next one is a few different takes, all by the same person. So, I'm going to break it down for each one. They had 3 there. Hellraiser sequels might be messy, but they're usually quite interesting. If you would have asked me this question, like, back in high school, I feel like I would have had a tendency to agree with you because I went through and watched like what isn't there like 10 or 11 movies in this franchise now? I went through and watched all of them. I hunkered through. I think there was only one of them that I was never able to finish because I was so freaking bored by it. Was Hellraiser Deader, I think was that one. But this franchise is a mess, and I would say interesting, yes, but where you lose me on the interesting part is a lot of those later sequels, especially the straight to video ones. There are multiple of them that are just generic cop story that had Hellraiser pasted into the script. I don't think you can argue that they're that good. They're not. In fact, the only one that I even found like somewhat of a redeeming quality in is Hellseeker, but that's only because Kirsty gets the littlest bit of screen time in that entry, but still that one is just a hot mess, and it's not good. Like that's the bottom line. It's really not that good. If this franchise would have ended on our 4 theatrical releases and then we would have gotten that remake that we got on Hulu a little while back now, then I would say yes, I agree with you, but it's a lot harder for me to agree with this take with all those straight to video ones in mind, because most of those are not good. Like I said, they weren't even Hellraiser scripts. They were like Frankenstein into that. So like I'm not like I can't take them seriously personally. The Human Centipede 2 is really good for its genre of extreme horror. This person actually got a couple in a row that like I have a lot of thoughts on, because this second one, yeah, no, I fully agree with you on that. I hate this movie for that reason entirely. I am such a completionist when it comes to franchises. I mean, just me talking about Hellraiser a second ago should show you that, because like who wants to sit through all 10 of those movies? They get so bad. I could not bring myself to finish the Human Centipede franchise after watching the second one. That first one, which arguably is a really good horror movie that doesn't show anywhere near as much as people say that it does, but overall, like that second one did everything that everyone expected that first one to do, but a lot more gross and gratuitous, and it's not a fun movie. And like very rarely do I need to cover my eyes like during a horror film, and like when things get too gory, it doesn't bother me as much usually. Like obviously, like yes, I cringe, like I'm human, but that movie, man, that just got under my skin so bad, and I have never felt the need to rewatch that movie because of it. And I feel no need to watch the next entry because of it, because I don't need that next entry to try and top what that second one did. I don't know if it does. I'm never going to find out. And I am completely okay with that. And yeah, no, so I agree with you. That movie accomplished entirely what it was doing, perhaps too good. Elevated horror is a term that could apply to lots of pre-Babadook and Witch movies. There's nothing in A24 that wasn't done before. This one I kind of find tricky a little bit because I agree, but I also disagree to an extent, because yes, there have been other like art house films that took like risks with their filmmaking before this, where the overall message of the movie is based entirely around like a metaphor or like an idea. And I don't think we've ever had a production company that only focused on telling these like indie type of filmmaking and like stories. So I understand why A24 gets so much praise. Also, A24 isn't for everyone. I feel like when they were first releasing these like very artsy movies, they were very cool because they were different, especially for what we get in mainstream media. In the same breath, too, I feel like as A24 has been able to continue and make more films, it is kind of a one-trick pony and it isn't really doing anything new anymore. I mean, obviously, I like A24. I mean, even like right there in my stack, like there, I have Pearl and Maxine on my set all the time. Like, so obviously, I like some A24 movies, but there are a lot of them that kind of just to me, where like it's like an interesting idea or like it's just not done right. And then there's other ones where it's just too artsy for me. Like I can't handle too much art house. I can live with it and like I have no problems with it whatsoever. But overall, man, like I'm not into art house movies typically. I get what you're saying, but like I really don't agree with that. I do think A24 did break new ground. It's just overdone at this point, and it isn't as interesting when you're constantly seeing it over and over and over and over again. Both The Hills Have Eyes and Last House on the Left remakes are better than the originals. I actually kind of agree with you. I don't know if that's a hot take or not, because I feel like those movies are considered like classics of their time, but like they're also like not up there with the greats where everybody's talking about them constantly. In fact, most of the time in like my day-to-day life, if like one of these movies were to come up, I don't think I've ever heard anyone actually bring up those original films. Like, I've only ever heard people talk about the remakes, especially for The Hills Have Eyes. Most people talk about that one. I don't think that's a hot take, but like, I also could be wrong. So like, feel free to correct me in the comments down below. But like, I do agree with this. I find the original Last House on the Left to completely shoot itself in the foot with the weird campy side plot that it has with the police trying to hitch a ride to the parents' house. I feel like it just completely takes you out of the movie when you have this duo of these like bumbling cops that are trying to bring some comedy to like an otherwise depressing story, but it feels ill-placed. And then the original Hills Have Eyes, because I saw that remake first and I feel like it redid everything in that original movie so well, when you rewatch that old one, it's not as interesting because it just kind of felt like a blander, slower version of that newer Hills Have Eyes. And I find that remake to be way more terrifying than the first, like, original iteration. So, like, I don't know if that's a hot take. I really don't. Like, it might be. These are both Wes Craven movies, so I know they have their defenders out there. But, like, for me personally, I prefer those two remakes over the original as well. Yeah, let me know in the comments, like, is that a hot take? Friday the 13th remake is better than any other Friday the 13th movie. This one, I don't agree with, but like, I see where you're coming from entirely, because I am not a die-hard stan for Friday the 13th by any means. I like the movies in that franchise, but I also think that some of them get taken way too seriously for what they are. And I don't mean that by like the production company taking them too seriously. I mean like people watching them taking them too seriously. Because I feel like this is another one where like it's changed in recent years, but there was like a whole onslaught of hate for this remake for a long time. I remember constantly seeing it online, in fact. It felt like it bottled up all of the things that worked in those other movies and put them all into one movie to make this like essentially like a mixtape of like Friday the 13th's greatest hits. I don't think it's a bad movie, and especially with like what that franchise has been given, you're essentially just rewatching the same exact movie like 8 times over with like a couple variations thrown in there. If I were to rank this franchise, the remake would be higher up on the list for me, but it wouldn't be on the top of my list because there are a few of the sequels that I think are superior to that film. But I will say, and this is probably a hot take, I do think that the remake is better than the first Friday the 13th. That movie is so freaking dull, and I have to be in just the right mood to be able to watch it, because sometimes when I watch it, it just feels comfy, it feels cozy, and then there's other times where I feel like I might as well be watching paint dry. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying about the remake, but in no way would I rank it at number one for me personally. Terrifier is an endurance test. I don't know how to break this to you, but like that's not a hot take. That is fact. That is entirely what that entire franchise is. The whole goal of Terrifier in every single entry is to outdo the goriest scene in the previous installment just to see how far they can push the envelope and make you uncomfortable. So like, yes, like your point is very, very valid, but I do not think that is a hot take whatsoever. So this next one is another one that has multiple hot takes thrown in there. The third one that they threw in there, I'm not going to react to because it's about Grave Encounters and I've never seen that movie, so shoot me, I guess. Sorry, I didn't do my homework entirely, I guess, so my bad. Lake Mungo is incredibly overrated. It's boring, predictable, and not scary whatsoever. I do understand what you're saying about that movie. In fact, I'm not even going to really defend Lake Mungo because I felt a lot of similar ways about it. In fact, I've noticed with like these mockumentary style movies that if I'm in the right mindset for them, that they are some of the rare times that horror still genuinely scares me. Something about seeing a film in like this documentary format, it just gives me the heebie-jeebies and it feels so real when they're interviewing all these people and like showing all these pictures that are supposedly from the events, but like not. I feel like if I would have seen this movie under a different setting than what I watched it in, I would probably be on the hype train just like everyone else. But I also feel like you have to like this style of filmmaking and be able to sink yourself into it and immerse yourself into that world and be able to like trick your brain for a second to like thinking it's real. And if you can't, then the whole gimmick of the movie kind of just falls flat, honestly. In fact, I would say a great example of a franchise that does this really well, it's newer, is the Horror in the High Desert series. Those first two installments, like, scared the bejesus out of me. I was home alone watching those, and I was watching over my shoulder. It was so creepy and eerie, and the way they built tension in those movies, like, you constantly feel like something's gonna jump out at you, but then it never really does. But no, I think this is very much a style of filmmaking where if you can immerse yourself into it, then you'll like it. So like maybe you didn't see Lake Mungo under the right setting, but like maybe you just don't like it and like that's all there is to it. So I get what you're saying, but I don't know if I agree personally. Like I don't even think it's overrated. In fact, I feel like it's more considered a hidden gem actually that's really only blown up in the horror community because I don't think general audiences really know what Lake Mungo is. Ari Aster is a one-trick pony when it comes to women expressing grief. I don't agree with this take actually. He only has those two films so far that have the two female leads who are struggling through grief, and I think he does a really good job with those two films. I haven't seen Beau is Afraid, so I can't comment on that movie. But both Midsommar and Hereditary, like, I think he does a phenomenal job with the storytelling in that. And this is an example of where I think A24 doing its artsy stuff is, like, very, very well done because both Florence Pugh and Toni Collette own those roles. Like, they should have won Oscars. It's no debate. They should have, but it's for, like, you're not going to win awards. We learned that with The Substance earlier this year. I very much don't think that he is a one-trick pony, and if he is, he knows that trick well because he still made two very, very good movies, and the versions of grief that he covered in both films, I don't think per se only affect women. In fact, with Hereditary, it's following like the grief of a child, of a family member, and like handling that. And then the second one, like with Midsommar, the grief in that is like about a dying relationship. Yes, there is the side to Midsommar where at the beginning of the film, her family dies. But overall, I would say the message of grief in that movie is her coming to terms and getting away from this very, very toxic, tumultuous relationship. And that's more my take. So like, I don't agree with you, and if I did, I would say that he knows that trick very well and knows how to do a good job with it. I find these public service announcement type analog horror videos that are popular on YouTube to be very unscary. I've seen some creativity in the space, but the majority seem to be incredibly generic. And again, not scary. I'm probably the wrong person to say this take too, because I think I know what analog horror is, but like I could have a completely different idea entirely. Like I'm pretty sure analog horror stuff like the back rooms and stuff like that. And if that's incorrect, like comment down below, correct me. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And I don't have much knowledge for analog horror. And I would say like me now, if I were to watch those videos, I would more than likely agree with you. But I also think that a big part of that stuff, and this isn't me dissing on anyone like in my age range or older that like those videos, but for me personally, when I was like younger, like a teenager, I remember seeing creepy videos on YouTube, like when it was way easier to fall down weird rabbit holes on YouTube and see like really strange videos that just gave you the heebie-jeebies at like 2 o'clock in the morning when you should have been in bed before school. I feel like that's something that's very prevalent for any type of scary videos that get popular on YouTube or the internet in general, even like with creepypasta taking a chokehold on everyone for a good while there. I think it very much appeals to only a certain demographic, and I think a lot of times that demographic ends up being tweens and like teenagers seeing these creepy videos and like getting like a little bit of like a ooh, like they're watching it. So me now, I agree with you. I don't think I'd find them scary. Even like with projects like the Backrooms, I've never found much interest in them. In fact, the only knowledge I even have of Backrooms is the episode of the Dead Meat podcast that covered the Backrooms, and then the episode of American Horror Stories that did their take on it. But other than that, like, I don't know anything about analog horror, and that might not even be analog horror. So, like, I could be completely rambling about nothing. But no, I do think that you just have to be in the right demographic for that kind of content. I think obviously someone like you or I are very much not in that demographic for it. So like overall, like I agree with your take, but like also acknowledge that like those videos probably just aren't for you or me. I think Halloween Ends was more interesting than the other Halloween movies, except the original and Halloween 4. I feel like whenever anybody makes a post about hot takes, Halloween has to come up every time, just like how the Nightmare on Elm Street remake has to come up. I do find myself agreeing with this, which I know is blasphemy. I don't think Halloween Ends is good as the finale to a trilogy, but I did enjoy it. I thought it was entertaining. I do think it took some balls to jump from a story that isn't about Michael, but about some random guy that isn't even in the first 2 entries. It wasn't telegraphed at all in the other sequels, and that's why it flopped so hard. I think if Corey had been in the first 2 movies, then we would be talking a completely different story with a Halloween Ends, but because he was shoehorned in there, like, it just wasn't good. It was very much a mismatch of like puzzle pieces that don't go together. I understand why genuine Halloween fans are mad about it, but for me personally, like I'm not that connected to Halloween. There are a couple entries in the Halloween franchise I like, but it is nowhere near the top of my list for slasher franchises. In fact, it's probably more closer to the bottom of said list because I'm just not a big fan of Michael. I think he is kind of boring overall, and a lot of the entries in it just don't do it for me. The Exorcist was very mid and almost laughable, had trouble finishing it out of boredom and lack of interest. I didn't like it when I was 13, and I don't like it at 26. Just isn't a good movie at all. The Exorcist 3 is better. I included the reply on this one because I think it's kind of funny, and I think it's just part of how Reddit works. When you ask for an unpopular opinion on any subreddit, it seems like you're gonna get met with a bunch of downvotes. Like every time, even if you're asking for people to give an unpopular opinion, people can't help themselves but get mad and frustrated at someone having a different opinion than them. And that happens a lot with The Exorcist because I really don't think it's anywhere near as unpopular for people to not like that movie. And I also don't think it's entirely popular to like the movie. I feel like this movie falls more into a middle ground where it's more respected for like what it did back in the day, but overall it hasn't aged the best. Like for me personally, and this might be a hot take even, and maybe I just think it's less of a hot take because I agree with these comments, is everything they said I feel pretty like is accurate, honestly. Like the Exorcist franchise is very boring to me. And I think a big part of that is because I've seen so many other exorcism movies before I ever even watched this movie. So by the time I saw it, it already felt like been there, done that. And I think it's the same way for a lot of people. A lot of these horror films that were able to set the trends that were in the genre are going to feel more boring if you have seen them later after seeing what they did to said trends. So it makes them feel like they're not new or inventive. It makes them feel like they're very stale and just rehashing old ideas, even though they're the original. So that could be part of the reason I don't like The Exorcist and that I've never resonated with it, because there's only like key scenes in that movie that I do find to be genuinely good. But overall, it just feels like there's a lot of filler throughout it. I just can't get into it anytime that I watch it. But I'm also not a big fan of Exorcist 3, so like, come at me, guys. Essay as the main threat to women in horror is lazy writing. For example, the lengthy tree vines attack in Evil Dead. Men are turned into deadites without being essayed. I do understand this take, and I feel like it's harder for me to comment on it as a guy, but I do find myself agreeing, especially with the original Evil Dead movie. It's a very viscerally uncomfortable scene when you see the vines go. Yeah, I don't think that it should have been in there, especially since the actress has even in interviews said that she had no idea that they tacked on that scene. And then she was deeply uncomfortable when the movie released in theaters and she saw that they tacked that on. I don't think that was cool at all. In fact, a lot of these like essay movies like about women I end up not liking, especially when those scenes are very gratuitous. Like I mentioned a minute ago, I like Last House on the Left, but I do not like that lengthy essay scene, especially with the fact that if you watch the unrated cut, it is like twice the length. It doesn't need to be that long. Like it is uncomfortable as is. In fact, a lot of that stuff you can make uncomfortable by implying it versus just showing it to the viewers. I don't want to say you can't have that stuff in movies because I don't think we should be censoring filmmaking. I think if someone wants to show something like that, then go right ahead. But I also think there's a tasteful way to do it in the same breath as well. So like, I agree with what you're saying, but there are some times in movies where I do feel like it adds to the horror of the entire film. So I'm only going to do a couple more takes in here because this video is already going to be really long. Apparently, after viewing a few threads, I know I'm in the minority in that I thought Final Destination Bloodlines was by far the worst movie in the series. Yeah, you are in the minority, and I want to like sit down and have coffee with you or something. Like no hate whatsoever, but I genuinely want to pick your brain and figure out why you would think that. In fact, it being the worst entry in the entire franchise as well, like that's nuts to me. Like I couldn't disagree more. In fact, for me personally, I would probably put that in my top 3, even maybe top 2. But yeah, no, like I really want to pick your brain. So if you end up watching this video, leave a comment down below and like explain to me what you hated so much about it, because I would love to hear it. No hate, no judgment whatsoever. But I just want to see like what made this the worst movie in the franchise for you. Like I genuinely cannot wrap my brain around it. And the last take that I'm going to have in here is one that I very heavily disagree with, but I also know that it is a very contentious point with horror fans. I feel like everybody can like have a take on this in the comments and let me know what you think. I've talked about this in other videos myself. Let decades old franchises end for good. Original ideas should be prioritized. Every generation needs their own stories. I think the obsession that many have with new Elm Streets, new Halloweens, new Hellraisers, etc. is childish and creatively bankrupt. It's like a kid that doesn't want his favorite cartoon to end. Yeah, no, I don't agree with that at all. In fact, I will be that kid that doesn't want his favorite cartoon to end. Like, off subject from horror, but like, as a kid, my favorite cartoon was Total Drama, and I, to this day, treat that as my comfort show. When they weren't releasing seasons of Total Drama, there was a fan-made series called Disventure Camp that was released that I started watching to fill the hole that Total Drama had left behind for me. So I am that kid. I am that kid that's throwing a tantrum when his favorite cartoon ends. And I am also that kid that throws the tantrum when his favorite horror franchises don't get more sequels. Although I do agree that we need original ideas, but I do, in my personal opinion, think that that idea completely falls flat when you see how many original movies are coming out. And I also want to throw out there that it is proven time and time again that general audiences are going to flock to movie theaters to go see these pre-existing IPs. And you can see it constantly with sequels that are getting released and the box office results that those get. But I don't think it's taking away from us getting any original ideas. I mean, we are on the heels of getting a brand new franchise with Megan, and I don't like Megan, which, hot take from me entirely. I am not a fan of Megan at all, but I do think that all these other franchises getting to continue to make sequels isn't ruining us from getting more like new IPs for us to end up falling in love with that eventually get turned into their own franchises as well. And for me personally too, and I've said this in a couple of my reaction videos to different trailers for sequels, but I genuinely don't mind getting more sequels to franchises, because even if you get a bad sequel to a franchise, there's a possibility that that sequel, because they were able to do that one, is going to lead to a hidden gem. You've seen it in the Saw franchise, you've seen it in the Scream franchise. I feel like across the board, you see it in all these different franchises that, like, they might release a bad movie that a lot of people disliked, but then they end up releasing one that a whole bunch of people love that you end up getting to continue the franchise in a good new direction. So no, I do not agree with your take at all. I will be that kid that throws a tantrum, and I want my franchises to not go away, man. But I'm going to throw in a couple of my own takes, like I promised, even though I sprinkled some in there. But one that I do want to touch on is that I just mentioned is Megan. I know that is like a huge thing in the horror community right now. Everybody loved that first movie. I wanted so badly to love that movie because the whole design of Megan, the way that she was portrayed in the trailer, the dance that she does is iconic. Girl, slay 100%. But the movie doesn't embrace camp like I thought it was going to. It ended up being a different movie than what I thought it was going to be. And it just wasn't my cup of tea. It felt very boring. I didn't think it really brought anything new to the table that we haven't seen before. And it just felt like a rehash of the Child's Play remake to me. And I didn't like that one that much either, so I wasn't going to like this one. So I am not a Megan fan whatsoever. You're never going to catch me there. But on the flip side of that, movie that everybody hated, I actually absolutely adored Exorcist Believer. And I think a big part of that for me is I don't hold the original Exorcist film to a high regard. I got into that earlier with it, but I do enjoy that entry a lot. I thought they did a really good job with it. I actually really do like David Gordon Green's style of filmmaking, especially in the Halloween trilogy, which I think is a hot take in of itself. But the way he does his world building, it feels very homey and cozy to me. I was able to latch on to a lot of the characters in Exorcist Believer. I really, really enjoyed the dynamic between the father and daughter. I thought it was very sweet, and it felt very believable. And I thought the child actors in it too were very good as well. And then the very bleak ending as they're doing the exorcism with the two girls, and then you have them in the tunnel. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. But I thought that was so well done, and even to an extent disturbing. And I was surprised that they actually went there with it. So I really enjoyed this movie, and I very much regret that I listened to what everybody else said about it when they were panning it, because I put it off for so long on watching it because everybody just kept talking about how bad it was. But I don't feel that way at all. I actually really enjoyed that entry, and with the slop that franchise has been given, I, in my personal opinion, don't think it lands anywhere near the bottom of the list for like worst sequel to the Exorcist franchise. In fact, I think you would have to try a lot harder to make a sequel worse than some of the crap that franchise has been given. But that's just my take, you guys. Anyways, I am so sorry if I did not get to your takes. This video is getting a little bit long. If I didn't get to your take, let me know in the comments down below, and maybe I'll do another video just like this, because this was actually a lot of fun. It kind of felt like just a chill hanging out, like Q&A almost. If you guys had fun with this video, then let me know. And if you want future content just like this, then click that subscribe button. I would love to have you on the channel. I cover everything and anything horror. So if you have any recommendations for movies you want me to cover, let me know that too. With that all out of the way, and with that spiel over, I am Justice, and I really hope to see you guys on the next one. Take care.